All right, the first thing I wanted to show you is this statement here. I want to talk about how the environmental conditions are cycled, and the cycle of exposure helps with the programming, which uses everything else: the church, the school, the internet, all of those things. And here is a research that I did on the folks that are involved at the CDC, and this article about how certain masks were made available during the COVID pandemic, which they then created a legislation for that no longer allowed those kinds of masks to be shipped into the area. So there was probably a chemical component to those masks that helped people in the initial stages of exposure, but then they were working too well, or it was their plan to make sure that only certain people had access to those kinds of masks after they had achieved the first result. This is just sort of a collage of some air quality index. That's what AQI stands for 2023, which may not make a lot of sense when you're looking at it here, but if you decide you want to research it, again, I'll attach the pictures and you can look more closely at it. But this is what I wanted you to observe, and that is the dust, the PM 2.5 and 10 particles are inhaled and then are part of your body and your bloodstream. And there's a high level of metal in these particles, which provides the magnetism or the electromagnetic connectivity, I guess is the best word, for how they have begun to now use 5G. And it hasn't always been cellular; it's been other means, but it has a dual focus, a dual purpose, and the other is to minimize functioning, because it's easier to control a population that cannot physically fight back than it is one where where people are strong and healthy and able to stand up for themselves physically. This is more evidence of how these cycles work. So you have 4 quarters, and then there's a respiratory cycle, and then there's a gastrointestinal cycle, and then there's a respiratory cycle, and then there's a gastrointestinal cycle. But this is the evidence of that. This is the EPA sampling schedule, where they plan to take samples from whoever they are using to study to determine the effects or the impact of the environment. I mean, they do sample the environment as well, but the purpose of sampling the environment is to test, what levels people can be exposed to and still be able to function in the way they need them to function. And this was a mapping of that from 2019 through 2023 at the time. And you can see they didn't even start collecting data and archiving it until October in 2019, but the color variations are how many days of exposure at that level for that particular month. And yellow, what I have found is anything above 25 is nearly suffocating. And we've had so many days. We haven't recently, so I think that part is over. But anything over 25 is extremely uncomfortable, especially for people who already have respiratory issues, even though they indicate that it's still good at that level. But you can see how many days the contamination level was really high and how often they did that. And that's what the sampling is for. So I want you to look at part 2 now with all these things in consideration. The impact of fasting on the physical body, on your ability to maintain weight, bone density, all of those kinds of things, depending on how often you fast. And then look into the impact of protein on brain health and cognitive development.